Okay, well, I think all four members of the committee are here, and it's 6:03, so I will call the meeting to order. Um, would anyone who is recording please identify themselves and let us know you're recording? Okay,
Helen, if you're recording, you need to unmute and identify.
okay. Um, all right, pardon me for the gaps, but no one stepped forward to take the minutes, so I need to make some notes as we go. Um, okay, is there any public comment? Would anyone like to make public comment?
Hi, this is Helen. I
Hello.
am recording this. Sorry, I'm a little late. I had technical difficulties.
Okay, thanks for letting me know. Anyone have public comment? Okay, I hear none, so we'll go on to approval of the April 13th, 2025 minutes, 2026, let's call those. Some reason they ended up 25 on the agenda, I apologize. So everyone had a chance to review it. I'll entertain a motion to adopt the 4/13/26 minutes.
If it's okay, I'd like to make a clarification on the minutes.
Yes, MJ, let me get the motion on the floor
Okay.
first before there's comments. Did I have someone make the motion to adopt those minutes? Okay, I'll make the motion. Do I have a second?
Seconded.
Thank you, Matt. Okay, any discussion? MJ?
I just want to note that at that meeting, I stated that the phase one project was still on the tip because there had not been a voted amendment. And I just want to clarify for the committee that after that meeting, I reached out to Stephen Tupper, and he informed me that in terms of the Bourne Rail Trail Phase 1 project, there is the last development related to the project at an MPO meeting occurred at the August 18th, 2025 MPO meeting. At that meeting, the chair noted that MassDOT received a letter from the town of Bourne Select Board that they do not want to proceed with the Bourne Rail Trail project that is funded for FY25. Mr. Moeller shared the project will not be advertised this year and will not be going forward as programmed in the tip. Mr. Stephen Tupper said, my understanding is while the town remains interested in the project, the design issues that prompted the select board's letter have not been resolved. To be clear, what this means relative to the tip, the Bourne Rail Trail Phase 1 project is not currently funded on the tip, but remains eligible to be funded. As indicated in Colleen Medeiros' email that I had with her prior, the design issues raised about the project are a matter to be worked out between the town as the project proponent and MassDOT. Should a resolution be found that is satisfactory to the town and MassDOT, then the Cape Cod MPO and MassDOT could reconsider the funding for the project. So there are two ways that projects can be taken off the tip. Formally, they can be taken off by an amendment to the tip. But in this case, that did not happen. There was no formal amendment of the tip. It was administratively removed in August of 2025. The letter that was actually received by MassDOT was from the town administrator. It was not from the Bourne Select Board. So that is a little concerning to me, but I just want to clear the record. I mean, the minutes of the meeting are correct based on what I said, but I'm just clarifying that what I said at that meeting was clarified after by Stephen Tupper. Thank you.
Thank you, MJ. In terms of the minutes do say that you pointed out that phase one's still on the tip. I guess that's inaccurate. We can certainly strike that.
I think that's the minutes are correct as to what was stated.
Okay, fine.
I mean, I think the minutes were correct at what was stated. I think the issue was that it's still eligible. And I had a follow-up with the Cape Cod MPO at the October. It was really strange because I didn't catch this in the minutes. In the minutes of the August meeting, there was an update on the project that didn't say that it had been taken off the tip. This was a paragraph above in some other piece of the minutes, and I can send the minutes if the committee wants them. And I asked at the October meeting if it was still on the tip, and I was told that it was. So there was conflicting information that I finally got clarified. So I'm just saying that's what it was.
I think that's very helpful to our next agenda item as well. But I'll call a vote unless anybody else has comments on the minutes. We have to do a roll call because we're on Zoom. So MJ.
I'm going to abstain.
Okay. Matt?
Yes.
Barb?
Yes.
And I'll vote yes. Okay. Okay, that brings us to the next item, which ties exactly to what MJ is talking about. So, you know, this committee made a recommendation to the town administrator for our charge to delay phase one, which then Marlene did act on and sent a letter delaying phase one, asking for phase one to be delayed. You know, there seems to be a difference of opinion about whether or not MassDOT is waiting to hear further from us about phase one, because as MJ pointed out, and I have confirmed, phase one is no longer on the tip. It's not on the proposed tip that's being considered. We are certainly in a position where if we wanted to, we could reinstitute it, although obviously not for this year. So I think the question is whether we want to advise the town administrator that we are done with phase one, that we want phase one to be continue to be delayed, that we want all phases of the rail with trail project taken off. The tip right now, phases 2, 3, and 4, or what they call 4B, are shown on the tip as sort of future potential projects. They are not on the current tip, but they do appear in the document in that sort of list of potential future projects. So, you know, so I really think the question for us is, how are we feeling about rail with trail? And if we, you know, if we are consistent with our past position that rail with trail is really not realistic, or too expensive, or requires too many takings, or requires a fence, or, you know, whatever it is, requires 11 bridges, then one of our options is to recommend that Marlene let DOT know that we're done pursuing rail with trail. If we're not, then I think if we ask to put the project back on the tip at some point, I think we're asking to put it back on the tip with its current design, which the town of Bourne has spent thousands of dollars at this point. Tim, I'm sure, could educate us better. but we've spent quite a bit of money designing that first phase. So if we go back on the tip, it'll be that phase, and then we'll have to process that phase, which, as we know, didn't go over all that well when it was presented at a public hearing. So that's the question on the table. I'm interested in what the committee is feeling about this right now. Now, he beat you by a fraction of a second, Bob.
Sorry, was that me or Barbara?
That would be you, Matt.
Okay. I think that framing is really good, Ken. Thanks. I guess I'll try to keep this reasonably short. I was doing a lot of thinking since our last meeting, because I've certainly, since the August decision, been putting some thought into like what a potential path forward would be. And I think what I ultimately arrive at is there are sort of two pieces that are at odds with each other. One is the feedback from the community that phase one as a terminus is not viable for the community. Phase one being rail with trail needed, as we were informed by the railroad division, for a siding for any rail that would remain, even in the eventuality of a broader rail to trail program. But that if we were discussing at the last meeting, the options to extend phase one further down to not put the terminus at Stackpole Park. But that ultimately just builds more rail with trail than I think this committee has expressed support for. So I guess I don't really see how we have a viable path forward with phase one, because one is either making greater changes and concerns for the Gray Gables community to Stackpole Park, and the alternative of extending phase one further south sort of goes against our previously espoused position of the rail to trail. So I don't see how phase one is viable in that current state, and with those boundary conditions. And further, I certainly don't see how phases 2, 3, and 4 would be viable as rail with trail. I think as I've at least opined before, and has been the voted opinion. So I don't. I'd be interested to hear from what others have to say. So I'll leave it there. But I don't see how phase one would be viable or a smart use of dollars.
Thank you, Matt. Barb?
So I do believe that it should go back on the tip, and I just think with a new design. I think the design was thrown at the neighborhood too last minute, and rumors went around, and the town didn't get a good view of what we really want in Gray Gables, just the few loud people that disagreed. But there are people who agree that they would love to have it.
Just to clarify, that they would love to have phase one?
Yeah, there are people who want it here in the neighborhoods, not everyone against it. That was just that meeting that some bad information got out in the neighborhood, and people thought there was going to be a dog park and parking lots put up, and so they went there pretty upset with misinformation.
Well, thank you. MJ, do you have comments?
I do have a comment. So, and I tend to agree with Barbara, because what we had attempted to do was to create a turnaround. Look, we knew that in phase one, there are other backup things, like they need certain rail to be there. So like when trains are waiting to go over the train bridge or coming over the train bridge, You need to have some backup capability. And we knew that from the get-go. The problem that we had is that we designed with the neighborhood this turnaround where there would not be a terminus. And that was to address neighborhood concerns that they didn't want the rail trail dumping off into their neighborhood with no parking. That's a problem. But when MassDOT changed that turnaround, that roundabout, like that turnaround thing, to be an exit also, so not only was there the roundabout, but there was also the exit, then that all that together impinged more on Stackpole Park than was necessary for a straight rail through. So I don't know what the options, we never had any discussion with MassDOT about what their redesign was, what it was, how it could be adjusted. I think we're missing an element. Now, I totally agree that phases 2, 3, and 4 are not workable as rail with trail. I think that MassDOT did a lot of research and brought in VHB to look at those things after the November meeting that we had, but they never brought to us the results. They kind of said that they thought that it could be rail with trail to Monument Beach, and then it was a no-go. But we haven't had any dialogue about that. They went and they started looking at phases 3 and 4. So ultimately, I agree that rail with trail for phases 2, 3, and 4 does not work, especially 3 and 4. But I feel that we've lost some sort of communication dialogue. And I think one of the things that we're advisory to the town administrator because we were set up as a town administrators committee, but it's for the town administrator to advise the select board. And I think what's important is for us to get some direction from the select board. I keep saying this. What does the select board want? Do they want us to continue as a committee, to continue doing this? Or are we just going to say, we're not going to do it until we know that there's an alternative rail route, and then we'll talk about it again? I don't have an answer, but I think it's important. I think it's important for this committee to have that discussion with the select board so that we're all on the same page. We haven't had an opportunity after that August meeting to discuss our concerns, the neighborhood concerns, or any of the concerns with the select board. The letter came from the town administrator. It did not come from the select board. So I'm conflicted. So that's my thing.
Thank you, Andrew. Tim, is there anything you want to add about the status with the design issues? Is there anything that is pretty much what MJ's reporting accurate about where we left things with VHB and MassDOT?
Pertaining to extending it further, or
just revisiting this turnaround and all the issues that met with tremendous resistance. We really never got. We didn't pursue that, I assume, because we decided to delay before we could do that.
Yeah. So when we sent that letter, VHB had their pencils down because our next move was to go for the easements and put it out to advertise, really. Where we left it with MassDOT is I think they wanted to continue the dialogue, but I think there was just some confusion on what response we were waiting for from DOT. So Me and Joe Yu didn't really know what to say. Colleen Medeiros had called. I didn't know what to say to her. So that's where we left it.
Thanks. John, I see your hand is up. Would you like to be recognized?
Yes, thank you. It's great to hear you guys discussing what's going to happen with the orphaned phase one. In the time between the August meeting and now, especially from watching the Bridges program, it occurs to me there was a flaw in the planning of phase one, which is very directly related to the fact that the community essentially put the kibosh on it. So Stackpole Park is a recreation facility. There's a federal law that says that a transportation project that's federally funded, that uses any funds whose original source is federal, cannot use or make any use of a recreation facility without first following a formal process that involves public hearings, etc., which is commonly referred to as Section 4F. I believe the town could possibly fault VHB for not flagging that, but I believe that should have been done. I believe if that had been done, the community would have felt, the Gray Gables community would have felt much more like they were in the driver's seat and this wasn't being pushed over on them. Because Section 4F says that the entity responsible for the recreation facility must agree that the final disposition of that facility after the use and after the project's all built out is as good or better for its recreation purpose than it was before the project was initiated. And that process involves, that's why it requires public hearings, and that would be, those public hearings, I believe, would be held by the selectmen or possibly by this committee, where the public could testify, and this, I think it's a select board would have to decide if and make that determination. So I believe that if you restarted phase one, you would still be required to do a Section 4F process before you could construct anything. And I think that the town should restart phase one and should do the 4F process and get all these issues out on the table with the community and sort it out and come up with something that works. If you're in the middle of a 4F process, you can go to Mass DOT and say, look, this is a 4F process. You and we, Mass DOT and our design committee here, are both at the mercy of the town and the citizens for whether we can do this or not. And Mass DOT is going to have to respect that too. So I think I'll just put that out there. I think you might want to contact town council. I might be missing something. There might be some kind of a smallness clause or something in Section 4F. I don't find it when I read it myself, but I'm not a lawyer and I don't know all the case law. But I think you should contact town council if you are thinking of going ahead with this project and ask town council to give you an opinion of whether or not it requires a 4F determination. All that said, I will, full disclosure, I think if phase one were built, it would be good. And as Barbara noted, there are people in the Gray Gables community who would like it. I think there's quite a few who would enjoy it once it's in place. But I think it's appropriate, given the fact that it's not in place and they don't have experience with it, for them to be concerned about Stackpole Park and its future. I personally think if you were to start from sort of ground zero or back to zero, that the right place to end would be somewhere at the Lobster Trap Company. You'd have to work with the businesses there to find parking to make that work. Those businesses would all benefit tremendously if someone in Sandwich could hop on their bike and go get fish and chips at Lobster Trap or meet their friends for dinner there. It would be a great obvious terminus point. And as much as I don't like Railroad Trail, and you've heard me speak at great length about the social problems with that. That much segment to have connectivity between Gray Gables and the bike path and between that little business community at Lobster Trap and the bike path, and also to get people on their way to Woods Hole past all of Bourne Village, past all of Gray Gables before they hit the roads. I think that that's a benefit that the town would thoroughly enjoy if it was built. So I think you should think about that. And it's a long, hard road ahead to make all that happen. So I can understand if people in the committee, on this current committee, feel like they're, they've done it, they made their shot, Mass DOT was too hard to work with. I'll agree with you on all those things. It's up to you guys where you go with this and what recommendations you make. But as a user of that path and as a coach of a high school sports team, which had quite a few kids in Gray Gables, that connectivity would be large. And I will also point out that this committee has in its charge that it should be promoting safe routes to schools, which that path clearly would be contribute to safe routes to schools. So I'll leave it at that. Unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to stay around for the agenda item about the future of the committee because I have to attend the Conservation Commission meeting and the Bridges people are there. But I will just say that I think our town needs some sort of a bicycle committee. If this committee's purpose is gone, they need to stand up a new one, but it would make an awful lot of sense not to try to stand up a new one. Thank you.
John, before you go, are you saying that the 4F process is triggered by the use of federal funding?
Yes.
Okay, well, I'm not sure we've had any.
Yeah, we did. The federal funding on the tip was mostly federal.
It goes through the state, but
Yeah.
it's the source of the funding is federal. It's a pass through in the state, and then it's a pass through from the regional transit authority to each project. But the source of the funding is federal, and that puts you under the jurisdiction of 4F. As I understand it, again, I recommend asking town council to take a look at it for you.
But I understand. I guess I was thinking we haven't used federal funding on the design. That's been at the town's expense.
No, it's not. It's not about the design. It's that construction can't start until there's a 4F process if the construction is funded by federal dollars.
Okay, thank you, Tom. Appreciate it.
Thank you. And I've got to go, but good luck with the rest of your meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I just make some comments to that?
Sure.
So we just went through this. The select board just went through this around the proposed bike path from Sandwich Road to the service road next to Keith Field. And MassDOT is constructing this as a workaround during construction. And they needed the select board to say that the impact on Keith Field was de minimis, that they could do this construction of the new bike path as part of their transportation project with a de minimis impact on the recreation facilities. That's that 4F, section 4F thing. And I hadn't really thought about this before. It didn't require a public hearing. It just required that MassDOT come and present the plans to the select board and the select board to say, but we did not have any kind of section 4F discussion around Stackball Park, around whether this new bike path would be more than a de minimis impact on the existing recreational facility. And I think that's a valid question. And I think it's one of the things that was kind of an issue for the people in the community, that they had this recreational facility that was going to be sort of taken over for this bike path. So I don't have an answer. I don't know if it's right or wrong. I do agree that asking whether this should have been subject to the 4F, section 4F is kind of an interesting concept.
Yep. If I may just weigh in on the 4F. So in August of 2023, we did sign the 4F determination. And I say the date as it's relevant to the fact that we hadn't had the design changes that really took us into the park the way we did with the path. But we did follow the 4F process for the drainage swale that was originally going to fall over when we had the lateral terminus that just went straight to a dead end at President's Road. So, I mean, John's not wrong. You know, we probably should have explored the 4F further, because the 4F actually asks you, how did you reach out to the public? What was heard at that time? And then the DOT engineer of record or engineer in charge signs off on whether the process was followed and what were the comments. So that we have the form. I just dug it up and read it real quick. And it does go into a little bit of detail of our the phase 1 25% design public hearing, the DPH, when we did do a formal outreach. So we have that, but I think we were definitely going over the line with that redesign on the 4F process. So I just didn't want you guys, I didn't want to like ruminate on the fact that we did or didn't do it. I just wanted to clarify that we did do it. We just probably never came back to it when we should have.
Thank you, Tim. Good call. Okay, well, if no one else has anything to offer, in addition, I want to, I guess, give my opinion. And I think, ironically, we're probably at a bit of a stalemate, because I really, in the end, agree with Matt. I think that, you know, this committee voted once before to essentially abandon rail with trail, even phase 1. Obviously, we're entitled to change our mind, and it sounds like at least 2 of us have come to that conclusion. But here are my concerns. My concerns are, you know, yes, would it be nice to have a little rail with trail? You know, it's going to have some of the same issues that we've been concerned about, namely the fence. But you know, obviously, we don't have the same impediments we have with the other 3 phases. We don't have bridges that we have to build. So this is a doable project. But I think it's important to remember that the price tag for this project is over $10 million for a half a mile of trail. And you know, I talk to people all the time, as you obviously would assume, about this. And whenever the subject of spending $10.1 million for a half a mile trail comes up, people, great, they do not like it. They do not think it's a reasonable expense of taxpayer money, especially because, you know, when you consider the other 3 phases, we're going to be at well over $100 million by the time we build the 6.2 million trail. So I have great concern about saying, let's move forward, you know, without really addressing the fact that we're moving forward on a project that's going to cost over $10 million. The second thing is, you know, in my conversations with people, no one I meet likes rail with trail. They just don't. I mean, you know, maybe they would be okay with a half a mile. Maybe they'd be okay with going to lobster trap, but nobody likes it. Nobody wants it. Nobody thinks it's the path that we ought to have, particularly given the relative inactivity of the rail line. And along those lines, I think it is pretty clear that we are in a stronger position to argue for pulling the track if we don't make improvements to the rail line. If we go forward with phase 1, that's exactly what we'll be doing. We'll be making improvements to the rail line, which will simply strengthen the argument that the rail line should stay, because now we've spent money to improve it. So I have really serious concerns about whether or not all of those things are worth it to build this segment of rail with trail. And frankly, I mean, I think we're all in agreement that 2, 3, and 4 are not going to happen. So I don't want to continue the fiction that, you know, we're going to build the whole thing rail with trail. And in fact, I would suggest that our advice to Marlene be that we yank 2, 3, and 4, that we recommend the select board yank 2, 3, and 4 from the tip. I mean, even as a potential project. Finally, having said all that, I think MJ is exactly right. We are an advisory committee with the town administrator, and I think we should, whatever we decide today, we should be giving that advice to Marlene, and then it's up to her to take it to the select board if she thinks that's appropriate. Okay.
I think at one time the town voted to put in the rail trail. And I think the only difference now is that the changes happened fast. And I think that a rail trail would be wonderful for the town of Bourne, wonderful for the community. And as for the tip money, if we don't take that money, then another town like Harwich or someone else will take that money to help with their trails. That's it.
Yeah, I
It's
mean,
expensive.
you're right. I mean,
It's not like we're getting the money back in our pocket.
no, but I guess I sort of, maybe this isn't the right moment, but it seems to me that that's an awful lot of money to spend for this project, and that we have some more sort of broader responsibility to the taxpayers, but obviously people disagree. MJ, you have your hand up.
They do. So I actually think, and one of the things I wanted to talk about tonight is whether this committee wants to meet with the select board. Especially since there are divergent opinions. The select board has to make a decision, or the town administrator has to make a decision as to whether this committee is going to continue, whether we're going to continue the discussions, or whether this committee is going to be disbanded and there will be no official committee representing pedestrian bike path interests in the town of Bourne. And I think that's a really important thing for this committee to think and talk about, because do we want to keep the conversation going? I mean, maybe there has to be an adjustment to the charge, or do we just want to say, okay, yeah, we're done. We only want rail to trail and we don't want to discuss it anymore. Are we done or are we not done? And that's, I think that's something this committee needs to kind of wrestle with. And I don't know how the other people in the committee feel. And although we're a town administrators committee, I do think that it's important for this committee to talk to the select board, because I think ultimately it is the select board that has to make some of these decisions as to whether or not we continue or a committee continues. And I think it's important for this committee to make some recommendations or indicate that we're split as a committee. I mean, this is a 7-member committee, I think, there's only 4 current members. If this committee is split, then that needs to be communicated as well. So I don't have answers here. I don't know how this committee feels. So that's just my question.
I'll tell you, the chair is feeling like you keep preempting my agenda. Since those are the next 2 items on the agenda, and I do think we need to get to them. The question of whether we're going to appear before the select board has already been answered. We are appearing before the select board on June 9th. We are on their agenda for June 9th.
Have you posted a meeting of this committee to attend that meeting so that people can attend and speak and participate?
You're saying we should, MJ, or are you saying we're required to?
If there's going to be a quorum, and I don't know if there'll be a quorum, but if there would be a quorum of this committee participating, then it is good practice to post a meeting to attend the Board of Selectmen meeting
Okay,
so that people can participate.
Okay, I'll discuss that with Marlene and Maria. But we are appearing on June 9th, and that's why I put on the agenda a discussion of what we're going to say on June 9th, and I've done a little outline for what I would propose I say to the select board to kick things off. Obviously, you're all welcome and can all speak, but and I'm tweaking it on the fly since we're, as I said, we seem to be pretty divided about whether to go forward with phase one. My plan for that is to introduce everyone and point out to them that it's a 7-member committee with only 4 members right now. That we had recommended to the town administrator to delay phase one, and it's now off the tip. I'm not sure the select board even knows that. That the select board should make some decision. That I would report our conversation briefly about this issue of whether to recommence phase one, and ask the select board to make that decision. Because ultimately in 2023, the select board voted unanimously to move forward with this project. They did not say rail with trail or rail to trail. And to some extent, I think there's some probably reason for me to very briefly explain that we've all come to the conclusion that the only way the whole trail gets built is to pull the track. And then in terms of our sort of progress on pulling the track, I would report essentially that the governor and lieutenant governor, despite our request, have not made a decision and do not seem to be making a decision anytime in the near future. That we've been advised and we believe that the Rail and Transit Division of Mass DOT is opposed to removing the track, probably principally because of the military, but secondarily because it's quote unquote an active track and being used by one user. Then I would briefly talk about the MC3 meeting that just occurred, because at that meeting on May 20th, I did have a conversation with Lieutenant Colonel Alex McDonough, who is the Deputy Base Operations Manager, so second in command to Colonel Potter. And basically what Alex told me is, contrary to what we might think, the military is still very much interested in having that track. They need to have that track. They won't let go of that track because it's part of STRACMAT, and they have a requirement, he told me, to have a direct rail connection to a port. So I took from that conversation that we were, in fact, not close to the military removing their opposition to pulling the track, and more conversations probably needed in that regard. The Friends of the Bourne Rail Trail are supportive of a new track, because that seems increasingly to be the key to a win-win here, where everybody's happy with the removal of the F2. But and then I think the question for the select board is, are they interested in phase one? Are they prepared to abandon phases 2 through 4? And then I think lastly, are they interested in a push for a new track? Because as I said, all opposition to removal of the F2 goes away. And Lieutenant Colonel McDonough certainly suggested that the military would love to have a new track if that could happen. So I think it's important that we put that out there too, to the select board. And then finally, and we'll talk about this on our next agenda item, I will let the select board know how we're feeling about the continued existence of our committee versus the possible dissolution of our committee and the formation instead of a board level advisory committee. on more general bike and pedestrian matters. So that's what I have in mind. How do people feel about it? Anybody want to tweak that? Is there any part of that that you don't think I should discuss with the select board? Yes, ma'am, Barbara.
I just wanted to put it out there that there are some people in Gray Gables actually that I know we're not a full board, but they were all up for joining and did their paperwork. So then it really wouldn't be split. There'd be more people who wanted the bike path.
Okay, so yes, certainly if we don't dissolve this committee, we should be talking about expanding the membership to get the 7 people we're supposed to have. There's supposed to be MJ satisfies the board of select member issue, and we have 2 at-large members, and then we have members of existing groups engaged in the planning. I suppose that would technically me, and we need a school department designer. You don't appear to have it. So certainly I agree if this committee is going to continue, we should talk about getting more members in. But having said that, right now there are 4 of us and it's clearly good opinion. Yes.
Would you mention the micro mobility safe ride that we just went to, that we listened to? Just that, everyone's, the world is using this as transportation. They're using bikes, they're using e-bikes, and, that people are realizing that new legislation has to get out there to help, support the walkers and the people who aren't on e-bikes. Like they're moving forward with this stuff, like it's important and it's part of, so to ignore it and just say it's too hard to put up a bike path maybe isn't the way to go. Just a thought.
Yeah, no, that was a very interesting discussion, and it's sad when I agreed. But
yeah,
yeah, I mean, I think it's certainly proof that that rail trails are going to be increasingly relied on for things like commuting.
right.
But I'm not sure that anyone here is saying we don't want to build a rail trail. I think we all do want to build a rail trail. It's really only a question of how we get that accomplished. So even if we agree that, we should abandon 2, 3, and 4, that doesn't mean that someday we wouldn't be able to pull up the F2 and build the rest of the pathway. It's just, as I said before, it's not going to happen anytime soon based on what we're hearing. And it also might hurt our case to have built part of it by railroad trail because we will have improved the railroad. So, I can certainly put that in. Is there anything else anybody thinks should be added or subtracted from my proposed presentation to the select board? Does anyone? Yeah, go ahead, Matt.
I think I like how you outlined it, and I wonder if, even in the context of the conversation tonight, is it productive to divorce the 4 sort of main pieces that I pulled from what you just said, which was what this committee recommends with regards to phase 1, what this committee recommends with regards to phase 2, 3, 4, and whether those should be pulled from the tip, whether the committee should continue to exist under an expanded charge or not, and then what the committee's opinion is on the town pursuing modern rail to the base. I think I wonder if we are split on all 4 of those things, and if separating them into 4 points of discussion may help clarify our position internally on each of those, because they're obviously 4 very different things. But I think separating it that way, the way that you did, I think would be great for the select board, and may be useful internally as well.
That's a really good suggestion.
Yeah.
Obviously, with respect to the first one, phase 1, we are split in our opinion. With respect to 2, 3, and 4, is it fair to say that the committee is unanimously of the opinion that 2, 3, and 4 can't happen as rail with trail? Would anyone like?
Can we go back, because you're moving really fast, Ken? Okay.
Yep.
So on phase 1, I think the question is whether we should continue discussions. I think the question of the section 4F on the revised plan is a good question. I can't say that I'm ready to move forward with phase 1. I'm ready to continue discussions with MassDOT on phase 1 to see what it could look like. That's a totally different thing. And I'm troubled by not continuing discussion, because they were interested in continuing discussion. They made a proposal. It was kind of late. We didn't have a chance to respond or get it right. So I would say I am interested in continuing discussions with MassDOT on phase 1 and how it can be adjusted to be acceptable to the town. Does that make sense to you, Barbara?
Mm-hmm, yes.
Yeah. I think that's what Barbara and I are saying. We're interested in continuing discussions on phase 1 to see how it can be made acceptable to the town.
Matt?
Yeah, I think framed that way, I mean, I see little harm in continuing the conversation, right? Particularly if there was a August 2023, I think Tim was saying, that the 4F determination was previously met. Like, if there's a piece of this that needs to be revisited and there's like a correct way to keep that conversation moving, to, like MJ was saying, make this acceptable to the town. I'm certainly supportive of continuing the conversation. I guess I don't know that it would go somewhere, but that's the point of conversation. Yeah, I guess that's all.
Okay. I will report it that way. I will frame it in terms of our discussion about whether to continue discussion. I don't know that we need to take a vote. I will say that, unlike the three of you, I don't really see any reason for us to spend our energy continuing to talk about phase that I think shouldn't be built, largely because I don't think the cost is justifiable, and because I'm worried that it will hurt our argument for pulling the track, without which we will never get the rest of the path built. So, which is, that's fine. So, should we move on to 2, 3, and 4? I don't want to put words in people's mouths, but are we in fact all comfortable saying that we do not believe that 2, 3, and 4 can be built rail with trail, and therefore we should not pursue those phases? No.
Yep, that's my opinion.
It is obviously my opinion. Yeah.
I definitely think on 3 and 4, I think that MassDOT had proposed something for phase 2 that they thought might work. And I think a terminus at Monument Beach might be acceptable, but it's difficult. I mean, 3 and 4 are definitely not. They're 3 and 4 are definitely not viable as rail to trail.
No,
So I was interested in maybe considering something on phase 2, but I don't know if it's worth it to discuss.
It could easily be an option. We could say, at least 3 of us feel like it's worth continuing discussing phase 1 with Mass DOT. We could recommend that we leave phase 2 on the tip as under the future project designation. But it sounds like we all agree that 3 and 4 are never going to be rail with trail. So let's not bother with them. let's recommend that, we formally walk away from 3 and 4. That will certainly reinforce the notion that we need to pull the track to build the whole thing. But there's, again, under your reasoning, there's no real downside to our recommending pulling phase 2 at this point. Does that sound reasonable? Okay. Okay, then that brings us to the third prong, which is whether we continue to exist, which I suppose is the next item on our agenda, and we'll then.
Can we wait? Wait, because there was another piece in there. Is that do we recommend pursuing, and that the town recommend pursuing the modernized
Yes.
rail? I mean, I think we're all in favor. I'm certainly in favor of the town and the select board getting behind recommending a modernized rail to the base so that we can actually have a rail to trail, maintain the rail requirements that are used. And I think I would be totally in favor of that. I don't know about the other people in the committee, but I would be in favor of that. And I think that's an important thing to say.
Yeah, no, I agree. I was going to come back to that, but we'll do it in this order. Matt, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think it would be great. I think now's the time to do it with the work that's being done on the bridges, if there ever were a time to put a rail bed in. And I think that also it would be good from a holistic perspective of taking a view not only at the path, but also the long-term viability of the base and potential ongoing conversations for other rail conversations that I think supporting modernized rail east of MacArthur Boulevard down to the base is a win-win for everyone. So strong supporter there.
Yep.
Margaret, do you agree?
Yep. Same.
Yeah, my opinion on this is, and it's the reason the Friends are going to push this, is it is the win-win, right? And along the lines of, if you think we should spend the 10 million, then probably you think it's worth spending 50 million or whatever it is to build that track. It does solve the problems. Obviously, it solves the 4 Upper Cape towns' concerns about some future potential use of rail. The military would be very excited about that. Obviously, it's a straighter shot. It could go, it doesn't even have to go on the base, apparently. It just has to be adjacent to the base. So, they would obviously prefer that. It would be a modern track rated at much higher speeds and a shorter distance. So, and whether or not it can be done is obviously the first thing that needs to be assessed. And, the Friends did have someone look preliminarily at the possible feasibility of it and got a positive response. But obviously we would need, as a first step, to do really serious feasibility studies to see how this would work and where it would run from. But there's no downside that I can think of unless you feel really strongly that a track isn't needed and we shouldn't be spending $50 million to build them. And we have to figure out where that money's coming from. But I agree with you. I think we ought to suggest to the select board that they strongly endorse examining that possibility. Okay. Well, at the risk of MJ, I'm thinking I'm going too quickly. I'm going to move on to the next agenda item, which is the future of this committee. And again, I sent the charge so that everybody could see what our charge was. We were clearly established as a town administrator advisory committee to assist in the creation of a pedestrian and bicycle pathway from essentially extending the Shining Sea Bikeway. So our charge is very specific, but it's general enough that it clearly encompasses rail with trail, rail to trail. It doesn't limit us in that respect. But we are an advisory committee to the town administrator. And the question I have around this is, we could conceivably ask to be reconstituted or dissolved, and then a new committee formed by the select board, um, which would be a policy level advisory committee to the select board. And for a more general charge about bicycle and pedestrian pathways or multimodal pathways in the town of Bourne. That would be akin to the committee that Falmouth now has, which their town committee has a broad charge and is a select board level committee. It would enable us to report directly to the select board if we wanted to. It would also enable us to get into things other than just the mechanics and logistics of building this trail. And I think that would be a good thing. So, you know, I'm interested in this happening. You know, certainly if we stay as we are, Barb is right, we need to add members to our committee. And we will continue to be focused exclusively on this particular pathway, which, you know, again, was our original charge. And the question is whether or not we want to broaden that. So to me, it comes down to, do we want to be a select board level committee instead of an advisory committee to the town administrator? And do we want to broaden our charge? Barbara?
Yeah, I agree with you. I think we should, you know, be a part of the select board, not just advisory.
Can I make a historic comment? So there was a period of time where the select board could not serve on committees that were established by the select board. This was under the charter. So originally the Southside Fire Station Committee was a town administrator Southside Fire Station Committee. And it was reconstituted as a committee, select board committee with a new charge. And it has, since that has happened, it has moved very rapidly towards actually getting a Southside Fire Station happening. So I think that creating a select board committee to advise the select board on pedestrian and bike path and safe routes to schools committee would be very important, especially because we have, over the next 10 years in this town, numerous decisions and discussions that are going to be made around pedestrian and bike paths related to the bridges project. So the select board did approve of the bike path connection between Sandwich Road to the service road by Keith Field, which will become a permanent bike path. There are numerous bike path things that are going to happen with the bridges. But the Conservation Commission meeting tonight is a potential closing of the service road so that pedestrian and bike path access under the Sagamore Bridge would be closed during the construction of the Sagamore Bridge. That's a really important discussion and consideration, not just on a conservation level, but on a pedestrian bike path connection of the community question. So I would definitely support that. And I would hope that this committee would strongly recommend to the select board that there be a pedestrian bike path committee reporting to the select board. And I would totally be in favor of that.
Yeah.
I would agree with all of that. I think it's a good time for our town to have a select board advisory committee that has a seat at the table for these decisions that are going to be made over the next 10 years. That'll impact our town at least for a decade and maybe forever based on the changes that are being made. So strongly in favor of either reconstituting or broadening our charge and reorganizing under the select board. However, the mechanism it would be, I'm strongly in support of that.
Okay, thank you. I think we're all in agreement, and I will make that recommendation from this committee. to the town administrator. And I will also, of course, report it at our appearance before the select board. I think my plan is I will have a conversation with Marlene, since this is a town administrator advisory committee, and to the extent she can obviously listen to this meeting, but I will make sure she understands what our plan is, because, you know, I think it's only fair to her not to have any surprises before the select board. So, but this will be the plan going forward, and I appreciate everybody's input. It's, you know, it was a lot, but, you know, I hurried and we got it done by 7:09, like that. Can you tell I believe in brief to the point? Is there anything other business before we adjourn? Obviously, again, every member of this committee is very welcome to be at that select board meeting on the 9th. I encourage you to come to represent our committee. And obviously, if any of you feel like you want to make remarks, either you know now or you decide then, that would be perfectly appropriate. And MJ, I will definitely look into posting it as a meeting of our committee to hedge our bets in case we do have it. Okay. Any other business? I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Matt, do I have a second?
Second.
Okay. MJ,
Yes.
Matt,
Yes.
Mark,
Yes.
and I will vote yes. Okay, very good. Thank you, everybody.